Poets, fate is by choice. You choose it. You got to know you're a poet. But you ain't going to get the financial rewards. You're going to get a lot of weight laid on you. They look at you as weird or something somehow. And I don't care your style, if your hair's long or short. Or you could get into the academy where it's stifled. Or you could see something new. And by seeing that something new that's here and nobody sees, and you illuminate others, then you got it made. So I'm happy being a poet, because I figured I saw something that no other people saw at the same time as Ginsey and Kerouac Burroughs, and laid it down. And that's why they call the Beat Generation a phenomenon.
In the words of Gregory Corso, the beat poet, known as an urchin Shelley, and whom Ginsberg called the awakener of youth, Shelley was a sharp daddy. The one who really turned me on, Corso said, was Shelley. Not too much his poetry, but his life. I said, a poet could really have a good life on this planet. That fucker was beautiful. A sharp man. Shelley made a return visit to Oxford incognito, with Thomas Love Peacock and Charles Claremont, to show Mary around the town and to see the rooms that he'd shared with Jefferson Hogg. Then, during this visit, which Charles Claremont described, Shelley told them of his scientific ideas, of his looking through telescopes at the rings of Saturn, and through microscopes at flies' wings and cheese mites, at the vermicular animalculae in vinegar, at all of the protozoan life forms, which they'd both compare to drowning fairies. Shelley said this was where he'd first wondered how mankind might begin the world again. We visited the very rooms, Claremont said, where the two noted infidels, Shelley and Hogg, pored with the incessant and unwearied application of the alchemist over the certified and natural boundaries of human knowledge. Shelley showed Mary where he'd had rows of galvanic batteries, and told her of his friends' excitement at their lightning discharges, and how they'd all queue up for electric shocks. Then he explained his fascination with the story of Prometheus, who stole fire from the gods, and he suggested that the story could be modernized if you switched flames for electric sparks. For at Oxford, Shelley would exclaim to Hogg, "What a mighty instrument would electricity be in the hands of him who knew how to wield it." Then he bubbled over with his obsession with balloons. What will not an extraordinary combination of troughs of colossal magnitude, a well-arranged system of hundreds of metallic plates, effect? And he and Mary became mechanized aeronauts in their heads. Then, during this return visit, Shelley also described the experiments he'd once conducted with a man he referred to as the alchemist in the attic, a Dr. Lind of Windsor in Berkshire. Shelley referred to this mysterious Dr. Lind by saying, "I owe that man far more than I owe my father." And Shelley would immortalize Dr. Lind in the character of Zonaras, the wise old teacher of science and philosophy, in Shelley's poem Athanasi. "Prince Athanasi," he wrote, "had one beloved friend, an old man with hair of silver white, and lips where heavenly smiles would hang and blend with his wise words, and eyes whose arrowy light shone like the reflex of 1,000 minds." Now Dr. Lind was the first man in England to hear of the experiment of Dr. Galvani, and Lind would take Shelley under his wing to repeat Galvani's ideas with his experiments, in which they'd pass charges through dead garden frogs and watch them jump, as it seemed, back to life. Then Shelley told Mary how very soon afterwards he had treated his sister's chilblains and cured them with small electric currents. From then on, Mary saw Shelley in a new light, and soon she'd find herself tempted to recreate her husband as a fictional being, one she'd make larger than life, though drawing on dramatic facts such as the sensation that she'd felt herself, stirred by electric jolts, coming from the sensual love she shared with Shelley, which was now giving her a new way of being, and changing her utterly through the belief that she'd joined her soul with his. A soul she believed carried such a transformative charge that she felt they could both conquer death. Then she'd combine all this with her witnessing the same man demonized by the world, denounced for his having let loose a monster, an atheistical monster in a Christian state, a man even accused of usurping his creator, and a man who was also pilloried for his nurturing another unwelcome monster, namely England's huge underclass. Then, exploited by employers and treated with more contempt than animals, common labourers whom fear and hatred would compare to a hydra-headed Caliban. A monster considered capable of anything, a blood-crazed, conscienceless beast, the working man was a monster, whose hopes Shelley was now misguidedly raising through his identifying with their cause. In their wisdom, the English upper classes saw them all as subhumans it was their duty to suppress, while idealizing themselves as a Herculean race with a monarch appointed by God. A monarch whose task was to seek out such monsters, any such bestial insurgents, hell-bent on disrupting their privileges, so it was their task to control them, to identify any dangerous stirrings, to suppress them for their own good, to jail the disaffected, to transport them for life, and executing children as young as 10. And while Shelley was spending a small allowance on schemes of political justice, his empathy with outsiders first made him a class traitor, and then characterized him as diabolical. After this visit to Oxford, a fictional character came to Mary, almost fully formed, and when she lost Shelley's child, this creation, who aimed to conquer death, took a hold. I saw with shut eyes, Mary would write, but acute mental vision. I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of a man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. In this reverie, Mary recast her husband as a scientist with an assembly of pauper's limbs that he'd reanimate through flashes of lightning. Mary saw Shelley as Victor Frankenstein. Her Frankenstein could draw on aspects of Shelley in his rebellion against tradition, in his attempting to give life to those who didn't have one, and in his shaping destiny by dispensing with God. Mary would have her phantom delving into the power of electricity, a power of equal fascination to Shelley, who'd see it as an emblematic of the muse's spark that gave man his feelings of divinity. Just like Shelley, Victor desires to begin the world again, to penetrate the secrets of nature, and to find the philosopher's stone and the elixir of eternal life. Like Shelley at Oxford, Victor Frankenstein reads Agrippa, Paracelsus, and Albertus Magnus, and just like Shelley, Frankenstein thinks it's possible to come back to life from the dead. Mary describes Frankenstein doing this, much as Shelley had tried, reviving corpses through his applying doses of bottled-up lightning from galvanic jars, but through science instead of superstition. In breathing life into Victor Frankenstein, Mary ventriloquizes Shelley. And when Frankenstein bubbles over with enthusiasm, Mary has him talking in Shelley's voice.
You've read Paradise Lost.
So much has been done, exclaimed the soul of Frankenstein. More, far more will I achieve. Treading in the steps already marked, I will pioneer a new way, explore unknown powers, and unfold to the world the deepest mysteries of creation.
Paradise Lost. You've read Paradise
But though
Lost.
Frankenstein was destined to become science fiction's greatest archetype, Shelley would be setting himself an even greater task than just being the model for Mary's novel. For Shelley was to set his heart on electrifying England's entire body politic, bringing it back from the dead with his words, words that spelled out revolution. Though poets of the Victorian establishment, such as the dour Matthew Arnold, dismissed Shelley's incantations as beautiful but ineffectual, his thought became dynamite to hardcore activists. He was a guiding light to the Chartists. The seed you sow, another reaps. The wealth you find, another keeps. Pirate versions of his Queen Mab were circulated and read aloud at union meetings, whereupon it was considered so inflammatory that Moxon, its printer, was jailed. Ye who suffer woes untold, Shelley wrote, or to feel, or to behold, your lost country bought and sold with a price of blood and gold. And a moribund body politic being jolted and being given a new lease of life through an electrical charge from Shelley's lines wasn't limited to England or to his time.